Hello and welcome to Extra Shot, the programme that puts the chocolate dust on the creamy foam that was the DSP Leaders World Forum. My name is Ray Lemaitre, I'm the editorial director at TelecomTV, and I'm here to introduce a series of Extra Shot programmes that look back at some of the key topics that were discussed during the recent DSP Leaders World Forum. Now I'm here with my co-presenters, but we're going to have special guests appearing on these shows. But at this point, I'd like to welcome my co-presenters and friends, Guy Daniels from Telecom TV and Chris Lewis, the MD of Lewis Insight. Guy, good to have you back.
Thanks, Ray. Always make time for an extra shot or two.
Absolutely. And Chris, welcome back to Extra Shot.
Lovely to be back, Ray.
Okay, great. So this is our second Extra Shot programme. In the first one, we looked at the topics of 5G for enterprises and edgeonomics. And by the way, thank you very much for all the kind comments that people sent in about that programme. And that programme, of course, is available in the video section on Telecom TV. But in today's Extra Shot programme, we're going to be looking at two new topics. We're going to be looking at the evolution of customer services, which was a great session during the DSP Leaders World Forum. And also we're going to be looking at digital services and how telcos are making that change from CSPs to becoming DSPs. So once again, I'm hosting this show from Telecom TV's virtual coffee shop. So let's start the programme by asking our special guests about their choice of hot beverages. So let's start off with Dan Ford, who is the VP and General Manager of the Communications Sector at Vlocity. Are you in the coffee fan club or the tea fan club, or neither? And if it's coffee, what's your go-to roasted bean beverage of choice?
Yeah, so I've spent my whole career in the communications industry here in the United States, and so I've got to go with the coffee club. And that said, I've got relatively simple tastes. I will not drink instant. I will not drink percolated coffee, very old school. But I'm also not, the super big espresso fan. I am happiest with a venti Starbucks or a similarly sized Peet's Coffee from here in the Bay Area. I like that because it will sustain me throughout the day.
I will not drink instant, a very important clarifier there from Dan. So next up we have Andrew Coward, who is the CEO at Lumina Networks. What's he supping? Are you in the coffee fan club or the tea fan club? And if coffee, what's your roasted bean beverage of choice?
That's a great question. So, well, given COVID, and given this is a virtual coffee house, I actually just making my own coffee with mocha java beans and turning that into like a latte cappuccino. But now, having invested in the machine and everything else, I'm kind of loath to go back to kind of Starbucks coffee now. It just won't taste as good.
No, it won't. You know it won't. Okay, well, good to hear that Andrew has been making some choice hardware investments. So we'll be coming back to hot beverages a bit later on in the programme, but now we're going to dive into our first focused topic, and that's the evolution of customer services. Now, when I think about customer services, customer experience and telecom operators, I think more about lip service, because over the years, by and large, the operators have been very good at talking about it, saying how much they're going to invest in and how good they are at customer services, but I'm not sure that it's always lived up to those kind of promises and expectations. So what do you guys think? Guy, let's start with you. Do you think that there's still a lot of a bit too much talk and not enough action in terms of customer experience?
I do, Ray. Absolutely. We've had decades and decades of spreadsheet-based sales. How many SIM cards can we shift? How many broadband connections can we flog? When it comes to customer service and customer interaction, it's always been, well, at the end of a contract or when there's a complaint, then we'll get around to it. That's not service. That's reaction. And
yeah.
equally, I'm not saying I want the telco to be part of my friends and family plan, or I'm not going to invite them round to the next virtual beer Zoom event, but a little bit more interaction and proaction would be welcomed.
Excellent. Now, Chris, I know this is a particular focus and bugbear of yours in many ways. How do you think things have been going in the telecom sector in terms of the evolution of customer services?
I think the challenge that we face is that when it was telephony, then everyone understood what the service was, and if your phone call didn't go through, you understood it and you knew what you were paying for. As we move into the digital era, and those service providers are providing the platform upon which other things are executed, whether it's Netflix or whatever, it's a much more difficult relationship. And add on top of that the fact that the customers will interact with the telcos in many different ways, all the way from calling a contact center to working with a chatbot. And it's in many ways it's become more difficult. So we're trying to put a framework around things which are not that easy to quantify. And at the same time, we tend only to interact with the telcos when, as a guy said, when we're trying to renew a contract, or indeed when something goes wrong. So I think the point of interaction between the customer and the CSP is a really interesting one, and one that should be defined by the way the customer wants to interact rather than the way the CSP wants to interact.
Okay, excellent. So, I mean, I think there is some evidence that the telcos are making some improvements and finally putting some money where their mouth is. So I asked Dan Ford at Vlocity whether he thinks that telcos these days have the tools they need to evolve their customer services, and whether he's seeing any evidence that they are making progress.
Yeah, I think there's a real desire within the CSP community to go down this route, because I think more than ever before, the operators recognize that the customer experience will be their key source of differentiation. Over the years, CTOs used to argue that really the network is the source of differentiation. I think that's true to a point, but only up to really good enough where the consumer isn't able to really perceive the difference anymore. Historically, CIOs would argue that the systems are their source of differentiation and that they needed to build everything themselves. And they'd often ask software vendors, hey, if I buy your software and my competitors buy your software, where's my ability to differentiate? And I'd often respond with my own question. Singapore Airlines and United both fly Boeing 777s. It's a reliable, safe, comfortable airframe. But is your experience as a passenger the same? Of course not. And so operators are really increasingly grasping that their source of differentiation comes from their understanding of their customers, what they're trying to do, and making their experience as effortless as possible, and then having the agility to update that experience and refine it as their customers' expectations, inevitably shift. And so I think more and more operators are really beginning to get it.
Yes, and I think they are, and there's evidence of this, I think, from some of the offshoots of some of the telcos. And for me, I think the highlight of the DSP Leaders World Forum session on the evolution of customer services was Mariusz Gata from Orange Poland, who talked about Orange Flex, which is a service that has I think in many ways it's probably transformed the mobile customer experience in Poland. Now that's a great example of what is possible, right? Guy, do you remember that particular part of that session being enlightening?
I do, Ray, and it was great to hear. In fact, we did a follow-up. We looked into more detail as to what Orange Poland was doing with its Orange Flex service, and from what I've seen, it looks very, very promising indeed. I completely agree with Dan about the importance. The differentiation is going to come from the customer experience. Leaving aside actual products, though, I think the user experience that telcos are offering via digital is generally woeful. In fact, I'll share a link later on the site. There's some amazing analysis done in the UK about digital banks and onboarding customers and going through how many steps are required. it's very applicable to telcos because the gulf between the good and the bad is huge, absolutely amazing. So there is a lot of work still required until we really achieve a good, differentiable customer experience.
Excellent. Chris, were you encouraged by what Orange Poland has done with Orange Flex? Did that seem like it was pointing towards the future of where mobile operators will go?
I think there's two issues here for me. One is the onboarding, as Guy said, and we know from examples with Reliance Jio in India how digitizing that process from, I think it was a 5-sheet paper process before that, makes such a massive difference. And I think in the Flex example, even scanning your ID as well as entering your credit card information, that made it a very simple process. So yes, and actually the example of how they responded to the Polish government and introduced a service for students and teachers within 72 hours of being asked, I think is an indication of the sort of the way in which they can change their processes. So some things that came out of COVID very well were that actually we as the telecom industry can move more quickly and be agile. Sorry, we can perhaps be flexible, if not agile. So I think, yes, I was very encouraged by it. I think the big question mark then is the ongoing interaction with the customer and how, I think to Guy's point, checking balances, checking data when you arrive somewhere, what's the roaming package available to you, what's using up all your data, those things, work on those apps, if you like, that digital interface on an ongoing basis really needs to be sharpened up significantly.
Okay, excellent. So the example of Orange Flex gives us a very neat segue into the second topic that we're going to look at today, which is digital services. Now, Orange Flex, of course, that is based on a cloud platform. It's bringing in third-party apps. It's behaving and interacting with customers in a very different way. And this is where the mobile operators are looking to get to. And this is an experience, or this is a way of working that very much comes from the examples from the web scale giants, from the Googles, the Amazons, the Alibabas of this world. So I spoke to Andrew Coward and I asked him that with regards to digital services, do CSPs still need to draw inspiration from the web scale giants about how to deliver what their customers now need?
Yeah, I think so yes, they do, and I think to a level they are from an enterprise perspective. From maybe these web scale guys, right? When they're going to market, they tend to focus on one product. They double down on it. They make that the thing, right? And for telcos selling to business customers, particularly, there's just a plethora of different things that are being sold from technologies, still from the 90s to brand new stuff. So I think it's kind of hard to focus. And when they go to market, they tend to have a kind of what is it that you need, and we can probably solve that better than anybody else. And then they're into the dynamics of pricing and so on, right? So they're a bit of their own worst enemy, if you like, from just having this very wide selection of products that they can put into market.
Yes, that seemed like a pretty fair assessment of where we are in terms of telecom services right now. But as we heard in the DSP Leaders World Forum session on digital services, operators are, and particularly with their enterprise services, are really trying to make the move and simplify things. But I mean, do you think that we're, even one step down the route towards for the telcos being better at delivering digital services, Chris?
I think Andrew hit the nail on the head when he talks about the wide choices available and some of the older technologies that are leveraged by the telcos. In my mind, there's a lack of focus on what role they play in the digital ecosystem, and therefore what they need to focus on in order to underpin all of that digital activity. They are caught between being a horizontal player, providing platform, which, by the way, now it needs to include some level of IT, some level of security, some level of AI. And caught between that and then moving up the stack to support the actual commercial or different industry operations. So I think they want to be in control because they work traditionally in control of their particular part of the business, but they need to be thinking much more about how they interact with other players and partner with other players to deliver those services. So in short, they're not in control of the services they think they are in control of.
And Guy, do you think that that's a fair assessment? Do you think that the telcos still have a long way to go? Is it a kind of a cultural thing that they're going to struggle to get out of the ways they've been doing business for years?
There is a long way to go. I think they know what they need to do and where their issues are. We all seem to know what the problems are and what their issues are. And so does Andrew. I mean, Andrew nailed it. Perhaps their sample bag is just too big and overfilling with goodies. They need to dump half of them out and focus and produce a more focused offering. And I think it comes back in a way to what Neil McRae said on another panel about BT. He said BT's not just a connectivity company, BT's a technology company. So what is it they're selling? And what do businesses and enterprises want from telcos? Is it the connectivity? Is it technology? Is it both? And then is it on price? Is it on performance? I think we all know what needs to be done and where issues are. And is it a cultural thing? I'm sure, yes. And they do need to partner. They do need to work closer with specialists. Will it happen? I really hope so. But I think, like all things telco, it will take slightly longer than it should.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, I think we've heard over the years many times the operators saying, well, yes, we still do have a service from 3 decades ago, but that's because we still have paying customers who are happy with that service. So they really struggle to let go of some of those services that are deemed incredibly legacy, and so they end up with a massive smorgasbord of services and applications on offer. So before we move on, Guy, Chris, any final thoughts at all on the evolution of customer services or the digital services journey that telcos are going down? Chris, any final thoughts from you?
I think what the COVID pandemic has proved to us is that actually the underlying service is robust and can cope with what's thrown at it. And I think this, a pat on the back for the industry for delivering against pretty tight timescales. I think to really understand what customer service is and focusing on the customer is still some way away for these organisations. Think about when they interact with the telecoms company. Think about on what basis they would interact. Their choice of channel. We tend to think about omni-channel and that we want everyone to go digital, but no, I think the choice should be there. It should be around the individual and the way they want to do business, not around the way the telco wants to do business. But fundamentally, the service has stood up really well. And let's keep building, change the culture, and keep building the service out, thinking about the customer. Okay,
well, I mean, one of the roles that we can play here at TelecomTV, of course, is highlighting some of the early examples and sharing those with the industry. And I think it's those kind of things, seeing what others are doing and how they're breaking new ground and interacting with customers. I think that can help to spur things on. So, of course, I think that's a call for the whole industry. Share what you're doing. Let's share the experiences and make this a broader industry thing. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier in the show, when we asked our special guests about their hot drink preferences, we said we would come back to this topic. And Guy, I think that you've been busy in the background and creating a nice leaderboard, or not leaderboard, because it's not about leaders, but a visual representation of the hot beverage choices of our special guests. So let's take a look at that and see where we are at the moment after 2 episodes of Extra Shot.
So Ray, yes, as you can see, we have spared no expense. We have put together a agile scrum team, and our best DevOps guys have come up with this, what I can only say is magnificent virtual beverage function. That's VBF, you heard it here first. Look upon our work, G matey, and please despair if you want to.
Well, it'll be interesting to see over the weeks if Neil McRae ends up as the solo person in the neither camp. I'm pretty sure we'll get some people going for tea over coffee, but I expect that the coffee section of that board. Sorry, the visual. What was it? What did you call it?
The visual beverage function.
the VBF.
It's a VBF.
As
it's
weeks
a
go on,
VBF. Yes.
the VBF will get very heavily weighted towards the coffee vertical, let's say. Okay, chaps, well, thanks very much for joining me today, and look forward to having you back for episode 3 of Extra Shot, when we'll be looking at a few more of the hot topics that we discussed during the DSP Leaders World Forum. So, in the meantime, carry on brewing, everybody, and see you next time.